I would say, don't worry about it. People are only going to participate if the WIFM makes sense. What's in it for me and what's in it for us? And if that, which is I call the rationale, but if that is clear, then and they have capacity, then they will participate. And if the risk is shared, and if the fear is managed, and if there is a noble purpose at the end of it all, that means it'll have meaning. It'll be great. However, we're all intrinsically motivated, everyone. It's just that the type of innovation, and this is where I get scary and spooky, may be different. So you have creators who are people who are going to innovate whether you like it or not. Yeah. So, you know, the Soviet Union, the communist system, put those people in concentration camps and forced them to work on military projects, you know, which is probably not a bad idea. You also have stabilizers, people who love driving systems around quality and who care about managing, you know, the upper and lower control limits around sample sizes. And, you know, that is a great discipline. I have great respect for it, even though I tend to tell jokes about them. So you may have your creator who has the ideas, you need a stabilizer. You also need someone that I call a translator, someone who steals ideas from creators, combines them in unusual ways, and then turns them into a proposition that you then sell to the stabilizer. And you always lie to the stabilizer that it won't take as long as it did last time. And you always lie that it won't cost 3 times as much and take 5 times as long. And a good stabilizer knows that you're lying, okay? But they're up for it. But those 3 will get you through the first business cycle. But if you want to get beyond one business cycle, you do need navigators. So you do need people who actually understand the timing of innovation, who understand the timing of money, when to get in, when to get out. And those are the kind of people who actually turn around and say, stop. Or they might say, go faster. And they might even say that your stabilizer isn't the right stabilizer, let's go and buy some Motorola capacity on the West Coast. And they will basically make those kinds of decisions for you. So I would argue there isn't a kind of inferiority. I would argue there are at least 4 strong stereotypical behaviours, and you need more or less of them at different times. So having the creator there in the value realization zone is probably too late. Unless you're playing a Steve Jobs game of mystifying people by just having him around for the charisma effect. And you know, you're definitely not going to want your stabilizer in that first meeting to ask certain key questions, which would demoralize the creators. And you're definitely going to have to be very careful with your translator. But you know, the key lesson I've learned is that people like Steve Jobs and James Dyson, they made themselves, they started out as creators, became translators, they actually forced themselves to develop the behaviours that made them successful. So I would argue, be careful about stereotypes. I've built diagnostics around those 4, but I would argue everyone's got the ability to adapt if they care enough, and if they're convinced in their ability to adapt. And so it's a kind of self-fulfilling prophecy. If you say to them, you are all adaptable, you are all talented, it's up to you how big or how good you want to be, then I think you begin to create a different self-fulfilling prophecy. I firmly believe that's true. If we look at innovation, one of the things I sometimes say to people is that innovation is a social and a political act. And, one of my favourite TV shows still is The Wire. I don't know whether you've watched that. Yeah. So what's fascinating about that programme is it appears to be about crime and the projects and the drugs industry and what happens when people have too much welfare money to spend. But fundamentally, it's actually about innovation. If you watch it carefully, there are lots of beautiful jokes about key performance indicators and basically how people learn to game them. But fundamentally, look at what happens to all the innovators. Essentially, the innovator has to be killed, especially in public services, because they shake the relationships that have been established, cosily or otherwise. They are the promoters of social and political change, which is why they have to be destroyed and punished in certain sectors. So it could be argued that innovation is actually nothing to do with trust. the act of innovation is going to require trust amongst those who participate. But the people who become consumers of that innovation will find their worlds changing. And in actual fact, trust, you can't make any promises in that situation.